If you just downloaded or are thinking about downloading an EdLeader AI workflow, this is the short video that's going to help you get set up. By the end of this video, you'll have a working Claude project with the playbook loaded in, and you'll have run your first use case. To get started, this is the Claude interface. Now, I know that many school leaders are not necessarily familiar with Claude, and you're probably more familiar with ChatGPT. So I want to take just a minute and kind of explain how Claude works and what this looks like. This is the Claude desktop app, and there are three parts of Claude that you can access as a user. So the first part is the chat feature, which is very much like a chat bot that you would use maybe with ChatGPT, or if you've used Claude in an internet browser, then you can access it that way as well. In addition to that, you also have Cowork. Now, Cowork is the area that we're going to be working in primarily for these workflows, and I'm going to help you get acquainted to Claude Cowork. So we'll take a look at that in just a minute. And then finally, you've got Claude Code. Once you become a Claude Cowork user, you may find yourself wanting to go ahead and transition into Claude Code, but we'll leave that for another video. So let's go back to Cowork and take a look at exactly what we've got. In Claude Cowork, you can create a new project, and that's where we're going to start to begin our conversation about Claude Cowork. So let's take a look at projects. These are the two projects that I've got listed out in my Claude Cowork instance right now. And in this case today, we're going to be looking at the strategic plan workflow and how we can set up a Claude Cowork project to bring in our school's strategic plan and then run some reports and generate some outputs that'll be helpful to us perhaps at different times of the school year. So what I want to do first is let's take a look at what exactly came with your EdLeader AI download files. When you download these files, these are going to come in a zip folder, and you're going to have this series of what are called markdown files. You can read a markdown file. The quickest way really is out of the Notepad app. So if I were to right-click the project instructions and come down here to open with Notepad, for example, this is what a markdown file looks like. Now, the first thing you want to realize is that with a Claude Cowork project, one of the benefits of having Claude Cowork versus using just Claude Chat is that you are able to actually read and write files that are stored locally on your computer. So we can, for example, set up Cowork to have access to that downloaded file that contains all of those markdown files from the EdLeader AI download. And then we can have Cowork actually take a look at those files and be able to render them out on the screen inside of the platform and have us be able to read them a lot easier than trying to read them in a text file. So I'm going to go ahead and set up a new project, and we are going to use an existing folder to set up this project. If you wanted to start from scratch, you could go ahead and create a brand new folder, store it somewhere on your computer. A lot of these I store in a root folder that's on my desktop, but in this case, I've already got a demo folder set up. So I'm going to use an existing folder, and I'm going to navigate to that folder. I have that stored on my desktop, and it's called Claude Cowork Demo. I'm going to pick that folder, and then I'm going to select the entire folder. This is going to give Claude Cowork access to that entire folder and all the contents that are inside it. You can set up instructions right now, but I'm going to go ahead and just leave that empty for the time being. I'm going to give this project a name, and I'm going to call it our strategic plan project. And I'm going to go ahead and click create here. So let's click create. This will create our strategic plan project. And once we're inside the interface here inside of Claude Cowork, you can see that there are a number of different things. First off, this section here should look fairly familiar to you. If you've used Claude Chat before, that's a very similar setup. Even if you've used something like ChatGPT, this is where the main work and the back and forth is going to happen inside of a Claude Cowork project. Now, a couple things to take a look at. Over here on the right, there's some project instructions. And one of the files that shipped with your download is a project instructions file. We're going to take a look at that here in just a minute. You've also got this area for scheduled tasks. This is where you can set up recurring automated tasks. Not really something that we're going to look at in this project per se, but perhaps as we get more into this, as you get more into this, that would be something that you want to take a look at. Finally, these are the files that are going to be accessible to you inside of this project. So the project folder that I set up was called Claude Cowork Demo. That's the project that's listed here. So I can twirl this open. And I'm going to see that inside of that folder, I have two different files. I've got a workspace set up, and then I've got some built files that I already have put together for this project. Right now, we're going to be focused on the strategic planning workspace. So these are the actual files that came from the download. When you downloaded the files, they look like this. You've got a workspace kind of description, and then you've got your project instructions folder. You've got how to add your KPI tracking, how to add your strategic plan. These are just reference documents. So for example, let's say I click on the how to add your strategic plan. This is going to open this markdown file. You can see it's a .md, and this actually just walks you through how you go about adding your strategic plan to this project folder. Another thing in here that you see is the project instructions, and I spoke about that here just a minute ago. So let's go ahead and open this up. These are the full set of instructions for how you are going to tell Claude what you're doing in this project and how you want to work. You can think of it as a master prompt of sorts, or a project prompt. And basically, this is going to be the information that Claude always is using when you are working in this project. So it's going to tell Claude what its role is. What I want to do is actually copy all of this from your role down, and I want to paste that into our projects folder. So I'm going to paste this or copy this. We'll close this out. And I'm going to go up here into the instructions. I'm going to click this pencil, and I'm actually going to just paste these project instructions right here. That's all you've got to do. The instructions are already set up for you, so you don't have to actually think through what do I need to include here, what don't I need to include. That's already built for you as part of the workflow from EdLeader AI. The project instructions are always editable. If you wanted to edit them, if you wanted to change them, you could come in anytime and change or edit those project instructions. But for right now, we're just getting this set up. We'll go ahead and click Save. All right, so I mentioned that the EdLeader AI download files comes with all the materials and resources that you need to get this project started. The one thing that I will tell you, though, is you have to go in and actually make the edits and the changes so that those project files have your information rather than being a generic template. So, for example, in your quarterly summary format, you go through here and it says adjust section names and language to match your district's vocabulary. So this file essentially walks Claude through how do you create the quarterly draft of the summary of where you're at with the strategic plan, and you run this once a quarter, but you have to give it some information in order to be able to do that. So you can edit these markdown files a couple different ways. You can, as I mentioned earlier, you can actually open these up just right in the notebook or the notepad, and any of these, just come in here and go to open with Notepad. You can also open it up in a Microsoft Word document, but just make sure that you're saving those as a markdown file. It's a .md, and that you're not changing the markdown. So if I wanted to open this with a notepad, for example, and come in here and make an edit to this, for example, I could set up my priorities. So this one happens to be in student achievement. I could add my different KPIs in here. This is a one-time setup. And so you're able to get that set up and then saved, and don't move it out of the project folder, leave it in the project folder. But when you get that all done, that will be set up so that every time you run this, Claude is going to reference the format that you want your quarterly strategic plan summary to be in. The point is here, though, that all of the instructions for how you actually work through this project are located in that download file folder that you've got. And you set up one time what's going to be actually in those files, and then you don't have to set it up again. The AI is going to do all the work for you. And so when I pull this up, this is the Millbrook Community Schools strategic plan document. And I have this loaded in here as an HTML file, but you could load it in as a Word doc, you could load it in as a PDF, however you store your strategic plan, but you want your strategic plan inside of your project folder. We also have in here our strategic initiatives registry. So this information is based upon our strategic plan, and it's got some baseline targets and different initiatives as you walk through this. So you can see a lot of data in here. Most schools are going to be collecting this kind of data. It's just scattered all over the place, let's say in 5 to 10 different sources. What this workflow helps do is to bring everything together, and then we're going to analyze the strategic plan against the data that's already set. All right. So how do you actually do this? Now that we've got everything uploaded, if we wanted to go in and actually, we get to the end of the quarter and we're ready to actually do something with this project other than just continue capturing our data, we could paste into Claude a prompt like this. And so inside of Claude, I'm going to go ahead and paste this prompt. It's the end of Q2 for Millbrook Community Schools. All of the data files from Cabinet have been added to the current quarter folder. Please read the strategic plan, the initiatives registry, the quarterly summary format, and all of the files in the current quarter. Then generate the Q2 progress report draft following the format exactly. And I'm going to go ahead and start Claude off on running this. Again, it is referencing that there are files inside of the current quarter folder. Go ahead and read those files, and then we can take a look at the format here in just a minute. What you can see then is Claude is actually going through, and it's actually starting to access and read the files that are in that folder. And this is going to take a few minutes, probably 4 to 5 minutes, but you can see it's created a task list, and it is reading all of the reference files simultaneously that we outlined up here. You can see the task list here. It's reading the files, and then it's going to draft the Q2 progress report, and then it will save that report to the workspace folder. So it is done reading the files, and now it's starting to draft. It says it's got everything that it needs, and it's starting to draft the Q2 report. Now this is going to be a pretty substantial report. Again, it's going to take anywhere from probably 4 to 5 minutes to actually go through and generate the report. So we will wait for that to run and come back here in just a minute and take a look at what it produces. It just finished, and what it did was gave me a little bit of a summary here. So it says view the Q2 draft. Here's a brief orientation of what the data drove this quarter before you open it. So it gives you some clear wins and then 2 flags that need your attention before the board meeting. Now remember, this was written for the superintendent who's preparing a quarterly summary of the strategic plan for the board. And so that's the perspective by which this is being generated. The summary lives inside of this project folder. So now what we can do with this is let's go ahead and open up the file and take a look at it. So here's the actual file. Again, this is in a markdown file. Now look, this is a pretty extensive document, but this is based on a quarter of data. It gives you an executive summary. Again, this is referencing all of your data, all of your KPIs, your strategic plan goals, and your metrics that you're evaluating on. It gives you a goals at a glance, goal by progress, and just a ton of useful and valuable that you can glean from this. One thing that I really like about this is obviously it gives you information on all your initiatives, your project priorities, etc. But down here towards the bottom, it gives you some information that's for the board. I really like this. Some section 5, questions for board discussion. And essentially, this is outlining some of the things that the AI surfaced in terms of some data analysis, and it gives you some questions to ask the board, like what is your tolerance, for example, on transportation being $68,000 over budget through Q2. And the Director of Business Services presents offset options in January. How will the board weigh the cost of the route against its strategic purpose? So, they had some changes which caused the budget to be overspent, and so now we got to come to the board and say, okay, what's your tolerance for this? What is your input into this? So I really like this section, this questions for the board discussion. All right, it gives you some focus areas for the upcoming quarter, some expected data in quarter 3, and then some board actions that are needed. So this is a really comprehensive report that if I'm superintendent, I'm gonna give the board this. But I also want to be able to summarize this. What were the big picture spots from our quarter 2, and where are we at with relation to our overall strategic plan goals itself? Now, you could take this document. It is produced as a markdown file. You could, for example, upload this markdown file into your Google Drive, export it as a PDF. You could open it as a Word document, again, export it as a PDF. You could leave it in Markdown. You could ask Claude Cowork to turn it into an HTML page and give it to your board that way. But what we want to do with it is I want to turn this into a presentation that I could bring to my monthly board meeting and just go through a quick summary of where we're at after quarter 2. So I could maybe paste in a prompt like this. Now take the quarter 2 progress report and generate an HTML board presentation using the quarterly slides skill. Now, if you've never used a skill before in Claude Cowork, this is essentially just a set of instructions that walk through how you want something to be put together. The first time you do this, you're probably not going to have a skill to necessarily use. But after you do it once or twice, then you may say to Claude Cowork, like, hey, we are going to have to do this every quarter. Let's go ahead and create a skill that allows me to create this presentation. You could simply just say, take the Q2 progress report and generate an HTML board presentation and leave it at that and not reference the skill. But I put together a skill to help with this. So let's go ahead and run this. And while that's running, we'll go ahead and close the actual strategic plan progress draft out. All right, so what Claude is doing here is it's loading this skill, and it is saying inside the skill essentially says to it, I want you to take the Q2 progress report and I want you to put it into 12 slides, create a cover page, have a little summary of the quarter at a glance, goals at a glance, the 5 priority areas, do a cross-initiative analysis. Remember that board discussion questions information that was surfaced. We want to have that on a slide, and then a look ahead and a closing. So again, as I'm doing this for maybe the first time, I could tell Claude, hey, I want you to take that Q2 report and I want you to parse it out into these specific slides and put some of that data into this slide deck. And that essentially is what Claude is doing right now. But I just did that as a skill because perhaps I've done this before and I know what I'm looking for and I want it to be the same as the last time. All right, Claude just finished up. It took about 3 to 4 minutes to create this presentation. It's 12 slides. So let's go ahead and open this up and take a look at what this looks like. I'll slide this over here so we can see this a little bit better. Again, 12 slides. Here's our title slide. And this is what it looks like. What moved this quarter? Here's our goals at a glance. It gives a little status indicator. Some overall goal status metrics, staff recruitment, and development, and retention, etc. So it puts together a really nice slide deck for us. Again, this took about 3 to 4 minutes for Claude to put this together, and all of this information is based upon the data that we provided the AI. That's the real power of the work that we're trying to do here. So the questions for board discussion, and then some looking ahead and closing steps. So within a matter of, really about 50, I'm Dr. Whitfield, the superintendent of Millbrook Community Schools. I'm able to take all of my data, I'm able to synthesize that data, put that into a very comprehensive report, and then create off of that report a presentation that I will then tell my board. And the amount of time that can be saved by using this kind of technology, it just can't be understated. Let's close this out. We will close this out. And I want to jump back here. We are in a specific chat inside of our strategic planning project. So if I go back to my strategic planning project, if you remember, this is what this looked like at the beginning. So perhaps every time that I get ready to do that workflow that I just walked through, I would start a new chat. I don't want to always go back into this same chat because this has context about quarter 2 that I don't necessarily want to bring into the next chat. So if I were going to do this after quarter 3, I would start with a new chat. It would go through. Here's all my files that are inside of this particular project. Again, this is our Millbrook demo, and the current quarter, here are the files that were generated from that. So I've got my board presentation. This is the board presentation file. Here's my strategic plan progress draft for quarter 2. So these are the 2 deliverables that were created out of this. To summarize, Claude Cowork is unbelievably powerful. Is it the perfect solution? No, but there really is nothing that exists out there that is. But what this allows you to do is it allows you as a school leader to set up a project and provide AI as much context as you possibly can in order for the AI to do work on your behalf. Nothing that we've generated today would be something that I would put blindly in front of the board, in front of the community, etc. But it definitely gives you a huge advantage in terms of creating a starting point so that as you do this work, you can hopefully save some time, energy, resources, capacity to do the work that only you can do. If you get stuck using an EdLeader AI workflow, contact me via email. I'd love to help you. I'd love to walk you through how I think you could use these workflows and use this powerful tool to help you in your work on a day-to-day basis. I think that there is tremendous power in leveraging the resources that we have available to us in 2026 that I believe will really make a difference in the lives of our school leaders. If you need anything, contact me, reach out via email. I'd love to help you. Good luck and have fun working through setting up these Claude Cowork workflows. I think you're going to really like it.